Welcome to the Talent Development Hot Seat. I'm your host, Andy Storch, and I'm excited that you're joining me today for another great episode and conversation to help you up your game and improve your capabilities in the world of talent development. And today we are talking about upskilling, reskilling, and especially talking about coaching and mentoring to help your people achieve more and improve their performance. My guest today is Jaime Albers, who is the co-founder of Mento, a company transforming the professional development landscape with performance-based coaching solutions. Mento is also one of our sponsors right now, and so we're very appreciative of that. With extensive experience in talent development, Jaime has pioneered an innovative approach to coaching that balances traditional mentorship with data-driven methodologies. And under Jaime's leadership, Mento has achieved remarkable engagement rates and is at the forefront of integrating AI into coaching practices, which we will definitely talk about today. Jaime is passionate about helping organizations bridge the skills gap and preparing workers for rapidly evolving workplace demands. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy. I heard a lot of words like pioneering and at the forefront, and I immediately said, I don't know, who are you talking about?
Oh, I don't be too modest, because I know you are absolutely out there looking into where these things are going, talking to lots of people. I see some of the innovative things you're doing. I'm really excited to dig in to some of the latest trends, some of the things you're seeing around upskilling and where things are going with coaching and mentoring. But before we get there, I'd love to start with a little bit of your background and find out, how did you get into this space in the beginning?
Yeah, it's funny looking back. Everything seems, well, now it all seems perfectly intentional, but I think as most of our careers are, there a series of choices that you make along the way that end up sort of fitting into a story and feeling like it's a bit of your destiny, perhaps, that I ended up here, but it was not entirely intentional. I studied Middle Eastern studies in college, so I was going a very different direction. And then I ended up at Google after college in a advertising associate role, which for anyone that worked at big tech companies in the 2010s era know that those were glorified roles for answering customer service calls or reviewing ads, things like that. So, but it was an amazing training ground. I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to start there. And I also had another very googly moment where I ended up working on a 20% project, as people might recall. And I ended up working for Google Play, which was new at the time, on the marketing team. I was interested in entertainment, so I started doing 20%ing for that team. And then I ended up transferring into the marketing team there. And so that sort of moved my career around at Google, and I was in a rotational program. And then I had a mentor who told me, build your toolkit here and then go off and do whatever you want. This is an amazing training ground. There's so many different roles and parts of the business. So really take advantage of that. And I did. It was the best advice, because Google, like most companies, really, it's about your internal network. It's about trying to take advantage of opportunities that may or may not exist. And I think one of the that was like such an important life lesson, because I think it was, so many of us are used to someone saying, hey, you're so great at this, why don't you take on that role? And Google was not a place like that. I don't think any workplaces are probably like that anymore, but it was a make your own bed. But if you made your own bed and you went out there and did your own thing, then you could create incredible opportunities for yourself. Obviously, Google is a unique situation because there's many, many, many different arms of the organization. So there's a lot of different places you can go. And so particularly good at sound advice at a company like that. And then I ended my time there as the CMO of Jigsaw, which was an Alphabet company developing technology tools to make the internet safer.
Very interesting. And it sounds very much like you had to be very intentional with what you're doing and where you're going, because it's such a huge company. There's so many things you can do, but at the same time, you don't have someone necessarily keeping an eye out for you. And you and I haven't talked that much before today, Jaime, but I have a book called Own Your Career, Own Your Life.
Yes, I know. I see it behind you, and I'm saying, I
taking
think Andy has
ownership
something
of
to
their
say about
careers.
this.
Yeah, and it sounds like you absolutely lived it. You went out and figured out what you wanted to do, and you were also lucky to be in a place, I suppose, where you could experiment a little bit, join teams, and follow your curiosity to some
Yes.
extent to figure out what you wanted to do. And for those that might not be familiar, the 20% you mentioned was Google famously allowed people to spend 20% of their time on sort of passion projects within the organization that weren't their core work. And I know this is famously where Gmail came from and many other things that Google has developed over the years. And so you got a chance to really experiment and learn and see things that you like and maybe want to pursue doing more of.
Yeah, I wonder if it still exists. It probably doesn't.
I
But
don't
yes, it was an incredible time in the tech era where you could pursue your curiosities while maintaining your core role. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think it ends up, like you said, in this fortuitous situation. I don't think it exactly reflects what's available in the modern workforce today. But I think people have probably created it for themselves with portfolio careers and other ways to pursue multiple passions and curiosities. So I think it still exists. People probably have had to go outside the walls of their company to facilitate that.
Yes, and many companies, and I've had some, heads of talent on this podcast who are pursuing creating more of a gig marketplace, if you will, inside the organization so that people can pursue different types of projects. I'm curious, it sounds like when you came out of there, you had done most work in marketing and customer service to some extent. Now you are way more in the talent and learning development side of the working world. So how did that shift happen?
Yeah. So when I was at Jigsaw and was promoted into a C-suite role, my boss had a coach, and I said, I don't know exactly what this is. This was pre coaching platform days at Google, just to age myself here a little bit. And so there wasn't generally available coaching, and he was like, this coach is great. I love being able to talk about my work and develop myself. And I said, can I have one of those? I don't know what that is, but that sounds great. Sign me up.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of sports growing up. So the idea of a coach really resonated with me. This idea that someone who is an expert in your field would be able to help you get better. Like I played softball, I had a batting coach, I had a throwing coach, right? And so I thought about it like that, like someone who played the game, had understood the nuances, knew the techniques. And what I very quickly found, of course, also fabulous, I was able to go get a coach. And they said, sure, why not? A glorious time in tech companies, absolutely. So I was looking around, asking around, and I couldn't find a coach that had that operational experience. They were generalist coaches. They had been coaching for a while. They were maybe at the retirement phase of their career. And again, this was a while ago. So just to put it in context, this wasn't, the industry has changed dramatically over a decade. And so it's really hard to find a coach. And so I ended up getting connected into sort of a female founders network, actually. And found a coach whose name is also Jaime. And she's an operator. So she had started her own companies. She had led businesses around the world. She was not that much older than me. She's maybe 5-10 years older than me. She's very relatable. And so I selected her because the thing that I really wanted was someone who could help me level up in my current role. I had just been promoted into a C-suite position. I was definitely in over my head. I had never even managed anyone before, and I was not managing a team, in addition to working with people who were much more senior than I was. And so I was absolutely overwhelmed. And I think one of the things too that was not originally shared in my story was sort of this existential feeling of angst and anxiety of, where am I going? What am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my career? The same sentiments that so many people have. I think no matter with your career looks good on paper. A lot of us are constantly dealing with some of these larger questions. And so I wanted someone who could help me answer some of these questions, have a healthy and productive relationship with work, and also help me get better in my role. And so she was very hard to find, but I found her, and it was absolutely amazing, completely revolutionized my career and my life. Because I was able to go in and say, hey, I need to go in and have a conversation with our chief product officer. I really don't know how to have that conversation with him. Or, hey, I've never actually managed before. What should my what should my leadership style be? How do I want to handle this difficult conversation? Or, hey, you know what? I'm really stressed. This probably isn't, the right thing to be feeling stressed about. We need to have better boundaries. I had no boundaries. And then also, where do I want to go with my career and my life? And if I felt like I knew where I was going, it reduced a lot of my anxiety and my stress in my day-to-day role. So you're not constantly being faced with these questions, as I think so many people are. And it was magical. And I said, where has this been all my life? And everyone should have one of these coaches. And the fact that she had operated in these kinds of companies meant that she wasn't just able to say, okay, let me ask you some questions about how you're feeling. We would get to a point where she could really help me, advise me, and mentor me, and to say, hey, I've tried this before. Maybe we should kind of workshop something like that. So it was game changing. And then I went to all my friends and I said, hey, I've got this great coach for you. And they said, in what world do you think we can expense a coach at that kind of executive level rate? And so that's how I ended up meeting my co-founder, who was thinking about something very similar. And here we are a few years later.
And I think most of our listeners who work in talent development understand the power of coaching, and that there is such a variety out there in terms of what you can get, whether it be an independent coach, a coach from a coaching at scale type company, an automated coach, a personal coach, and then their level of experience and how good they are or not. You don't know. You mentioned you grew up playing softball. I used to coach my daughter's softball team, but
Really?
I'm far from an expert. Yeah, far from an expert in that space. And we did win a league championship, but I think it was more in spite of me than
the girls are like, what does Andy know?
I don't know what he's saying, but we're just going to keep trying to get better. But I made me think of that because I felt like in over my head, but like, hey, they needed a coach. And I think it's helpful. But I also brought in an assistant coach who was way more talented and experienced than I was in that space. I want to talk about coaching, but I also want to pivot to talking a little bit more broadly about what's going on in talent development right now, because there's a lot of changes going on. I know you talk with a lot of people in talent development. What are the biggest trends that you're seeing that are really impacting the space right now?
It has been a wild few years. And it's really interesting to see where we're sort of headed to in the future. I think we're flipping back, but I think what I've seen, I'll just talk about this year. I mean, I think every year has felt like a monumental change in the talent development and learning space, but also probably HR more generally as well. Companies as well. The world is just moving at such a fast pace, and how companies are being organized and the various trends that are happening are absolutely wild. So I think a few key trends that I'm seeing. One, L&D teams are completely changing how they operate, in my opinion. So when I say that, the leading talent, all the L&D leaders that we work with now really think about themselves as product engines. They're product teams. Their audience, though, is internal employees, but they're thinking about it in the exact same way, which I think is brilliant. Their employees are their users. They are in charge of driving engagement and activation and satisfaction, behavior change, all the same ways that a product team would think about designing and delivering a product to external users. L&D teams are thinking about that for their internal audiences. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. I love the way that they're thinking about it. And I think it is spot on for this time. And what I mean by that is, I think we went through a period where people basically said L&D doesn't really matter. Post-pandemic, it was like, this is the only retention era. This is the only, thing that matters. We have to retain our employees. This is so great. Then there was like kind of the crash of like, we need to cut HR teams. We need to cut L&D teams. It doesn't matter. We need to save every dollar. And then that obviously didn't work. And now we're back on the rise. And I think as a result of that, a bit of the crash and burn, if you will, or and also with AI, the mandate of every team is to experiment. So I finally feel like there's both, it's like timing and like the cultural moment matter a lot, where I feel like L&D teams are really getting the opportunity to sort of their time to shine, of saying, we're going to actually give you budget. You don't just have to have a one-person team that needs to be in charge of 10,000 employees to develop all of them. I mean, crazy ass of people, just absolutely insane. And we're going to give you no money to do that. And oh, by the way, like, we don't really actually want you to try anything new. Like, your job is to not spend money. It was totally insane. And now it's saying, hey, experiment, try new things. And also there's so much more available than there was a few years ago. There's been so much more innovation in this space. I think before it was like, we have to do boutique coaching only, or there's fill in the blank, kind of the one or two. It's either boutique or like the one platform for learning, or LMSs that no one uses. And now we are moving into an era of so much excitement, lots of innovation, budgets, probably never enough. First of all, I'm sure every L&D leader listening would say, I want more. But also, I think there's just a total cultural change around saying, okay, actually, this is important. This does matter. We should invest in our people a little bit here, actually. And L&D leaders I'm seeing are really meeting the moment. Obviously, ROI and measuring is becoming key. That's becoming a lot easier with tools like AI to actually analyze the data and give you interesting insights, and to be able to do that at scale. So there's a lot of really interesting trends that are happening. And I think that we will look back at this time and it will be thought of as a product function, internal product function.
I think we're in an interesting time as well, because obviously AI has been the hottest trend and is disrupting a lot of jobs. Unemployment's a little bit higher, especially for younger workers. And at the same time, we still hear a lot about a war for talent and bridging the skills gap, and organizations not necessarily being able to fill some really important roles. I know bridging that skills gap is something that you work on and you're passionate about. We also hear, as far as trends are concerned, a lot of organizations these days saying that, we're going to do more skills-based hiring. We're going to do more upskilling. We're going to be developing for the skills of the future. And I often wonder, how do you even determine what those skills need to be and start developing the right skills, the right people with the right skills? So I'm curious what you've been seeing in that space.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think a lot of people don't know yet. I think there's been there's a decent amount of experimentation, and the book is being written. I also don't want to overemphasize what we've been able to achieve with AI in modern workplaces for HR teams, for other teams as well. I think we're still behind, especially for what we're delivering in terms of HR teams. That's why I think, looking back, but I don't think I have not spoken to an HR leader yet that said, we figured it out. Phil, we have the cursor for, we have the Claude code for HR. Like, that doesn't exist yet. That hasn't happened. It will, where we're able to effectively, L&D leaders have the toolkit to effectively develop every leader within their organization in a highly personalized and effective way. We are not there yet. I think we're pretty far off still. But with that said, in terms of what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of promise and excitement. What HR teams, I'm seeing a lot of HR leaders work hard to upskill themselves, to start building internal tools for their organizations using agents and things like that, which is incredible. Yeah. I think the more that people use it themselves, the more that they'll then be able to actually help others within their organization learn how to use and become really proficient in AI. What I'm seeing is, this is what the engineers on my team tell me. So I'm going to parrot them here, but I think it's absolutely right, just from my own experience. I'm sure you have your own stories as well, but Interestingly enough, it's very much about being willing to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
They say there's a fearlessness that you need to have of just being able to dive into something completely unknown, and understand it. I think organizations will do more things like more internal sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? Uh, and do that. I think a lot of that is being siloed right now
More collaboration, more communication to share across silos. And that's certainly one of the biggest challenges I hear working with organizations that tell me people are working too much in silos. They're not collaborating and sharing enough. And we need to create more of that. And part of that is in the culture and how things are set up, as well as what's encouraged and incentivized, and how people are developed to build more of those collaboration skills.
Yes, I would say a few ideas on this for folks that I've seen and I've heard work well. One, you do need to incentivize people taking the hour or the few hours to actually work on these skills. I think a big problem right now that people face is that they're so underwater in their jobs, or they need to be focused only on revenue, only on this. And so it feels like taking time out. It's almost like reintroducing the 20% project, but maybe we just
Yeah,
call it like a 5% project. 20% is
sure.
a whole day of a week. So it's
Right.
probably more like 120%. Maybe we don't want to go back to those times, but
Yeah.
half a day, 5% of their time, something like that, 10%, to really work on developing these skills. It will pay dividends for the organization. And so obviously it needs to come top down from leadership. But L&D leaders that I know are saying there are engineers or product people or other folks, practitioners who are hobbyists within your organization. Go find them. These are people that are usually very passionate about teaching others. They want to share
Yep.
their skills. Maybe they have their own X account that they're sharing ideas within their community. And one of the things that we'll do at Mento is someone will host almost like it's like a brown bag lunch, and you can do it virtually, you can do it not. Either people will share what they're doing, or they'll come with a problem that they have, and they'll say, hey, this is something where I think an LLM could help, but I'm not exactly sure how. And then they'll have like a collaborative session where they're shown how to do that.
Okay, so
And work
sharing
on
openly about the challenges you're dealing with so that you can get help from other people, which is such a big part of collaboration and open
Exactly,
communication.
exactly. It's like almost like going back to basics, right? Of like, I remember in the olden days at Google, there would be like an HTML and CSS class where there would be a Googler. It was all, they called it G-Learn back in the day. Googlers taught Googlers other courses. And I remember signed up because I just felt like it was important to understand the basics of how some of this technology worked. I took a day to do it, and I still remember those foundations. They had a whole course too, even for example, for women. Women coders would be teaching non-female, female non-technical folks. And that was a space because maybe people like to be learning in those environments. So there's a lot of things that you can do just internally. Does not require budgets. I bet you people would they would be so thrilled about it. And then there's other benefits, like you said, greater cross collaboration, breaking down silos. Maybe you meet someone, oh, hey, I brought this problem that maybe an engineer can actually help me solve internally. That's actually impactful on the business. I'm not even suggesting people bring in personal projects. I'm saying bring in work problems. And then now you're kind of like, one of the things that I've felt is so valuable with LLM based learning is if someone can kind of just get you out of the gate. It's like the blank page problem where you
Just
start
point you in the right
experimenting.
direction to start getting right, because
Yes, or you start
whether
and you
it's
get stuck and then you're in that like frustration hole with
yeah,
LLMs. I'm not sure if you've been in one of those before, but where you're like basically going around in circles and not making any progress, or the LLM's hallucinating like crazy and you're like, all right, I quit. I can't do this anymore. But usually it's at that point, I'll bring it to an engineer and say, hey, I think that this is something that I can solve with the LLM. I've not kind of cracked the code. and they'll spend 30 minutes with me. And if you do that across an organization, because then also
Right.
too, if I can watch someone else do something and learn. So
Well,
I think
there's a
that
million
lunch and
great
learn
AI.
mentality would be great.
Yeah, and there's a million great AI tools that can help us. And we hear all the time, oh, you need to be leveraging AI more. But the problem is it's a sea of options and you don't always know where to start, which is why I'm big on, I create forums with entrepreneur friends to share, okay, what are you using in your business? And I want to provide more guidance to people in talent development as well to hear, okay, what are other people using in their companies and their organizations to help them become more effective? Because otherwise, a lot of times people just sit there overwhelmed and don't quite know where to go or where to start until you have someone say, oh, this is what we're doing. You need to point this way. And it sounds like you're saying one of the biggest keys to bridging the skills gap is getting back to basics on collaboration and communication, where people are working together more, sharing what they're working on, what they're going to need help with now or down the road, so that you can either find the people that can help with that or start developing the skills inside your organization to work toward that so that you can address more of those needs in the future.
Exactly, because I think that if it's not done internally, the gap is going to become very large.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see it emerging, like I see it emerging, and I think it will create. I think there will be a set of people that will be left behind if organizations don't really start investing in bridging this skills gap. So if not, basically you're saying, hey, you need to like learn this on the side. And it's very different. It does remind me a little bit of, the engineering craze, and it was like everyone needs to be a coder.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously did not prove exactly to be true. Not everyone needs to be
Now everyone can be with the help of AI, right?
exactly. But right, exactly. But now a little bit that's being more true. But also every role is going to have a technical element to it now. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also so much easier with AI. Like being
Yeah.
technical, this idea of even being technical, I think is going to completely change because it's going to be normalized and expected. People are talking about it in job interviews. It's going to start going everywhere. But I think L&D leaders will be on the forefront of enabling this and enabling younger worker every generation. And it's a huge challenge, obviously, in L&D that there's multiple generations, the most generations in the workforce right now. But I think this is something that everyone can get behind, and even thinking about it of generations teaching each other or getting mixed across generations. There's so many different tactics that you can try depending on the culture of your organization, of just bringing people together internally to share and learn, and not even worry about all the tool sprawl either.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the core foundational models, whatever's within your organization. So many of these are very, very powerful. And
Yep.
then as teams get more advanced and get more specialized, they'll maybe be more internal building. Someone will feel really, maybe someone internally will say, oh, I really actually want to help you do that. Or I don't know, teach you how to vibe code that. A lot of innovation can spread internally. It's really, really hard. I want to acknowledge that. I know I'm like, oh, just,
Yeah.
set up a bunch of
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah. Just go do this.
It's really hard. But now's the time, because every, C-suite executive, every leader at the top of an organization is worried
Mm-hmm.
and cares a lot. Every L&D leader I speak to is saying, oh, it's in my OKRs to figure out AI. It's like, what? And they're like, that's a what? Like, what? That's a big
Big thing.
mission. It's a big goal. But this is an easy way to start. And thinking, I love thinking about it, just saying, I have a goal of figuring out a group within my organization who I want to help upskill, and do that via internal learning and knowledge transfer.
Well, and I've talked with multiple organizations about this, especially in the tech space, that do have this big goal of implementing more AI and getting workers to use AI more. And I'm working with one. And one of the biggest issues that's coming up on the people side is the mindset side of that, right? Of the fear that comes with, A, I don't know what to do. What if I do something wrong? And B, if we bring in more AI, what does that mean for me and my job, right? It's natural that people are going to be worrying about that. And so we have to find ways to address that as well and give people the capabilities, the confidence, the mindset to go out and try and experiment with different things, and the faith and hope that as they develop their skills, they'll continue to be valuable to the organization and won't necessarily be replaced. We don't know that for sure, but I think that's the best bet at this point.
I completely agree. And again, I think that's also where addressing the mindset can obviously come in from multiple different directions. But that's also where I think this idea of peer-to-peer learning and knowledge transfer is so valuable. Someone coming in to help you and saying, hey, I can help you do this. And you say, oh, actually, I can do that. And then you do a little bit more on your own the next time. And then suddenly you're saying, like, the learning curve is much shorter actually than other technology cycles. Like, maybe many of us are scarred from the days when we were told we all needed to learn,
Mhm.
JavaScript and Python, and that's like a really, really hard thing to do. And
Yeah.
a 10-month, like, now it sounds crazy to say, oh, I'm going to go do like a 10-month boot camp to learn a new coding
Right.
language.
Right.
The learning curve, I think people will surprise themselves. People are
Mm.
incredibly adaptable.
Right.
I think, again, if they can get out of the block, get some support along the way, they'll surprise themselves by how quickly they can pick this up. And then it becomes exciting and fun because now you're learning a new skill and you're
Yeah.
being challenged in a new way. I say one of the things that I've discovered for myself, but I think is probably true for most L&D leaders as well, is a lot of us are almost taking on a new sort of body of IC work, regardless of our leadership level, because we're needing to learn how to use AI, LLMs, other technology to do aspects of our job or empower our organization in a certain way. So you might go say, okay, well, I'm going to go try to figure out if I can figure out the skill and then maybe teach it to someone else, or maybe I can help the team figure out how to analyze a piece of data. And then if I do that, then I can also then teach them how to do that and create a
Yeah.
sustainable system. So there's also, I
Well,
just think we're all becoming managers and ICs, but
mhm.
leaders and strategists, but it's carving out that time as much as you can to
Yeah.
figure it out. But an idea that it's something you need to figure out on your own, I just don't think is, I mean, I really
No,
respect those
absolutely.
people,
Well,
but that,
speaking of that, let's talk about coaching and
yeah,
mentoring.
yeah.
You made a comment earlier about learning at scale, and I imagine alluded in some part to people having more access to coaching, right? To be able to personalize learning at scale, I should say. And you talk about not trying to do things on your own, making sure that you're learning from others. I think that, or as I said, most people in talent development have recognized the power and importance of coaching. We've seen more
Absolutely.
coaching offerings at scale, but a lot of times the coaches don't necessarily have any experience in the area where the person's coming from. You've put together a platform that has more of an 80-20 mix, right? 80% coaching, 20% mentorship, almost call it an anti-coaching platform. So tell me more about how that works and why it's so important.
Yeah. Mento was created on the simple idea that knowledge workers would respond and connect more deeply to people who had been where they want to go, who had operated, who had worked in similar companies, who understood their function and knew what it liked to be an engineer, knew what it liked to be a designer at a company. And so the way that we wanted to do that, we didn't want it to be like traditional therapy or coaching, where people do not typically have functional experience, who do not understand what it's been like to operate in one of your roles. And we also felt that there were limitations to what the traditional models could provide. Coaching is a lot of questioning and driving self-awareness and deep self-reflection. All that is incredibly important. But we wanted to bridge the gap between coaching and mentorship because we really felt that's where performance gains could come. Also, we all know the stats. Everyone wants a mentor. No one really has one, or very few people do. And it's limited to very certain populations within an organization, most often, certain demographic groups. And we said, well, coaching helps you think, mentorship helps you do. So
Mhm.
if we could bridge those gaps, we could really change how people performed and operated at work. And we've seen incredible results from that. That was sort of the bet of the business, and it has
Yeah.
absolutely worked. Um,
Can you give an example of what that looks like? Because I think most people understand what coaching looks like, someone that can come on and ask you questions and help get the answer to come out of you. Mentorship, we know, is working with someone who's in theory been there before and done that and can guide you in your situation. So what does that mix look like? What's an example of that at Mento?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, let's take one of our coaches, one of our original coaches, Rico. He was the head of creative and design at Netflix. He started the design studio there, which he grew to 100 and from 0 to 165 people. He was there for over a decade. That's just one example of his career experience, by the way. And so what he does is he coaches a lot of design and creative leaders who are growing teams, who are maybe starting design studios within larger organizations. And what's so valuable about coaching, and we measure similar to, leadership skills, management skills, performance skills. We kind of think about what we do on 3 tiers and or in 3 levels, and work with you to identify what's going on, what might be getting in your way. Same principles of coaching, but then instead of saying, all right, we're good here. Great. Now you have that self-awareness. Good luck. Saying, hey, let's actually figure out how we're going to solve that problem or work on that problem. Or maybe you're having trouble giving feedback. Okay, let's actually workshop. Let's talk about what that conversation would look like. Now that we've realized that it's a blocker for this reason, here's what I experienced. Here's what I found when kind of giving feedback to these kinds of people. And then you workshop it, and then you can actually leave and go have that conversation and make that progress. So what it does is it really unlocks that sort of behavior change, because it equips you with the tactical strategy or the conversation to actually go have that conversation. That's just one example. Obviously, it can vary a lot. Oh, I'm struggling with I just can't figure out how to work to create this product strategy. I'm really struggling. Okay, let's workshop it together. So it can really vary. It's not so the beauty of
It
that.
creates more of that collaboration and mentoring that so many people crave and is not happening very much inside organizations right now.
Exactly. But what it does, and also, by the way, one of the things that we hear the most from our members about what they love about Mento is that you, as an operator, have credibility because you've been there before and you understand, so you can also challenge someone. And that is really important because growth also happens with challenge. Just saying, hey, a big complaint we always hear about other platforms is that, a coach ends up just being a hype person. That's great. Absolutely. You should build your confidence. But you also, many of us, every organization is feedback starved. That is, in our surveys, it's always the lowest starting point of I give and receive actionable feedback at work.
Yeah. Right.
And you can also have a coach that says, hey, I've been your VP before. Here's an assumption that maybe I'm going to challenge for you about maybe what they're thinking, what their perspective is. And so that also enables self-awareness on another level, because it enables you to challenge and think about problems differently. And that's also where growth happens. Just saying, hey, Andy, you're fantastic. They are wrong. You're doing everything perfectly. You're the best. That's great, but that's not what
it's not going to help you grow.
need to do. It's not like people should feel more confident, but you should feel more confident because you are learning and developing and you're understanding how to navigate difficult situations with more confidence, with more tact, with more awareness. And all of us, and I think the premise of business is in today's age is even more important, because all of us are operating in deep unknowns and a lot of uncertainty. All of our roles are changing. The skills we need are changing. The shape of our organizations are changing, and it's changing up and down. It's not just, up and to the right. It's forwards, backwards, sideways, front, back. Quarters look different. We're just not in stable ground. And so having someone that can really help you navigate that and adapt to the ever-changing environment and do it with effectiveness and performance is massive, 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 massive.
You mentioned there's a lot of changes. We have big needs to reskill, upskill, develop people. Coaching and mentoring is great, but it's not something that necessarily scales that easily. So I would imagine we still need training programs at some rate. So I'm curious, with so much pressure on L&D teams to show that programs are utilized, that they're valuable, that we can measure the impact. What do you think is the right mix? And I imagine it's different for every organization, between training, coaching, mentoring, and what do the results look like for the coaching and mentoring that Mento is offering with organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, we're firmly in the ROI era.
Mhm.
If you want to have things funded, they almost always need to be able to measure the ROI and impact. I think that it is one of the things that we're seeing that's, I think, a benefit of this is it's a lot of data sharing with our partners and saying, hey, these are the benchmarks, and just simply saying, this is the retention rate, this is the engagement rate, these are how people are performing on general skills that are important to the business. And then here is, we can A/B test the different groups. That's becoming a lot more common. Also, if you're working with any vendors, they really need to help you do this work. It is not all on you. We do a lot of this work for our companies. We do a survey, we do the analysis for them. Obviously, we'll need to do some data sharing to make sure that we're properly comparing to measure the ROI, but really make sure you're evaluating that with any vendors you're talking to. How are you thinking about this? And most of our partners now do this. I think it's very much deeply ingrained within the function now, which is saying, in 6 months' time, I'm going to have this conversation with my leadership about the impact of this program. What does that presentation look like? Do I have the buy-in? Are we aligned on which metrics are most important? And so people that are doing that, as opposed to just saying, oh, let me just buy this thing, I think it might work. So there's that savviness around measurement efficacy. And by the way, with tools like AI, it's a lot easier to measure and organize at scale. But also, again, your vendor should really be doing this for you. The same, metrics are evergreen, I think, in our space. It's retention, it's performance across the variety of measures within an organization. Obviously, you can get more functional. Engineering might have velocity, or sales might have revenue goals. Management and leadership skills, we measure those, but those are consistent. Your ability to give feedback, your ability to coach your team, the retention of your team, the performance of your team, your ability to have difficult conversations. And you can check this, because self-reported data does have its limitations, of course, but you can check this with managers. You can check this with your report. So there's lots of ways to triangulate data now, and I think it's just a lot easier. I think before it was so much manual work, and if you're a small team, who has the time? So that's one of the things that we've been seeing. It's been great. Since we're more oriented around skills and performance at work, we really focus on measuring those. What we've seen is that retention correlates with motivation, focus on high impact work, so real prioritization. So those are two of sort of the main metrics that we focus on, and of course, setting clear goals. We typically see within a group 20 to 30% gains across those metrics. So quite massive. I think organizations tend to underestimate how much people struggle doing those things when so much is on their plate at all times. And so getting a coach who can help you really navigate that and think through it, or come up scaled learning, still very important. How are you thinking about prioritization? How is that cascading in the organization? So frameworks and priorities that can be scaled are also ways that L&D organizations can help their teams in making sure they're partnering with their HRBPs. Obviously, it can vary. One of the things that we always see is it varies drastically by functional group, depending on how teams are organized. Also, gender plays a very large role. We typically see different, quite significant gender differences within organizations, leveling. So we think about it as ICs, managers of ICs, managers of managers of ICs, and executives. So that's how we break it down. But the data is usually there. It's now just a lot more accessible, and then getting really targeted on what you want to fix within those populations.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned AI in there, and you mentioned AI a few times throughout this conversation, and justifiably.
How can you not?
How can you not? It's one of the hottest topics.
Yeah.
I'm getting questions regularly now from people in the talent development community about AI coaching. And I know that's something that you've been investing in as well. So can you talk about what's going on in the world of AI coaching and what is Mento doing specifically?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time to be in the space. Like I said, there's a ton of innovation happening. There's also a lot of AI coaches out there now. It seems like there's every day a new AI coach is emerging. People are also using ChatGPT and other tools. So what I've been hearing from my L&D partners is that there's a lot out there, and it's very hard and everything feels a little bit the same. I think the key learning that we've had in our experience of designing with some wonderful design partners is that, and where we're focused is on when AI was first emerging a few, kind of post GPT-3, and everyone said, wow, like there really is the possibility here for AI to drastically change how we all work.
Mm-hmm.
And the key learning that we had, I think most of us said, oh, wow, we can now scale humans. Now everyone's going to get an AI coach. Now everyone can have coaching, and it's going to be the best time in the world. And wow, we're going into new renaissance and era. And I think that has proven not to be true. AI coaching, it doesn't mean it's not good, but it's for, I think, what we've learned is for major temporal moments. Oh my gosh, I'm going into this high stakes conversation, or I need to go think through how to tell my report that they're not getting a promotion or whatever it might be. That's really important and super valuable. But that doesn't actually make up the majority of work. And majority of our work is in the mundane leadership activities. It's in the prioritization. It's in the conversations with your team. It's in the motivation. It's in understanding what's going on and assessing what's going on with your team. We all have little things that are going on with all of our reports at all the time. And how are we navigating that as managers? It's very hard, very, very hard. And also as leaders, how do I develop the skill, or how do I work on this in the day-to-day? So instead of focusing on just trying how AI can replicate humans, which as of today, I don't think it does particularly well in the coaching space. Again, I think it's absolutely phenomenal for some one-off conversations, but AI isn't going to, we know we're in the people business. I'm curious if you agree with this or not, but
no, I agree with you. I think people value human connection and working with someone who has experience in the area where they work. Now, you could argue that most LLMs now have all of the world's experience at their disposal, right? But they don't have that personal experience. I've been in your situation. Here's what I would do. Ask some important questions. I agree. We're not quite there yet. I think it is nice to have AI in those moments. I go to ChatGPT sometimes and ask, hey, what would you do? What should I think about for this? But it doesn't replace for me working with like an experienced human.
Yeah, exactly. And that thought partnership is invaluable, especially in high stakes moments where in emergent situations that are very stressful for people. I think that's beautiful and so valuable. And I think that's incredibly important part of how AI can help people in the workplace. And then one of the ways, the core way that we're thinking about it is actually, how does LLM technology actually invent new ways for managers and people to lead? There are so many micro situations, if you will, where a coach can be helpful beyond the high stakes conversations and the high stakes moments. So instead of thinking about it from a broad AI coaching lens of kind of navigating conversations, what are new ways in which coaching could exist with LLMs? So for us, that's more focused around agentic workflows, helping people in the day-to-day with things like one-on-ones and meetings, helping managers understand their teams and get a better pulse. Coaching is still also reactive. Right? I come to you with this situation and we talk about it, usually post facto or maybe far ahead of time, but there's no real time still. And so what is a proactive way? What happens if we got ahead of things? What happens if we had early warning systems that could help guide us and enable us to do things without, like today, for example, management is so hard, especially as an IC. Imagine if there was a world in which you really understood what everyone on your team was doing, you could manage their growth, you ensured that they were working on prioritization or whatever skill they needed to be working on with with an LLM based coach, but without you having to be there all the time. So I also think it's going to enable new forms of management and engagement between a manager and a report in ways that just didn't previously exist, because no human has the time to be with someone all the time and give them that level of personalization and support, and do that agentically. Like I firmly believe in an agent future where we have LLMs helping us do things that give us more time and also enable us to do things that, again, people can't do. It's so hard to pick up on all the various signals and things that are going on in our workspace. So that's a little preview, but maybe I'll come back next time and talk about it when it's more formally out in the wild.
I cannot wait for that. Jaime, we're just past the top of the hour. Do you have another call now, or are you okay for 5 more minutes? Have we?
Yeah. That's great. Hold on. Let me just text.
I do have another call, but I was booked like 3 months ago and I have not heard from, I was just sending an email to see, but anyway, we'll wrap this up in just a couple minutes.
Great. Okay, great.
Cool. Okay. So Jaime, as we wrap things up, I think that everyone's aware of the power of coaching. There's tons of different opportunities and options out there for organizations that are looking into providing more coaching and mentoring to their people, and they're considering different options, working with people, bringing in AI coaching, whatever it is. Obviously, we'd love for them to come check out Mento, but what do you recommend? How do you start? How do you evaluate different options and figure out what's the best approach for your people and your organization?
Coming back to one of our original conversations about L&D teams as product functions, what do your users want? What do your employees want? What do they need? What are the gaps that you're trying to address? And what are the problems that you've had in the past? So I would do an internal look and research, and then look to find vendors that meet the needs of your organization. So an example just for us is we are working a lot more with AI forward groups because they have large engineering, research, product teams, but also there is a feeling within these organizations that these folks really wanted, they don't want to work with people that they're not as excited about working with people who are not operators, who have not operated in growing organizations, who don't understand what it's like to be an engineering leader or fill in the blank function. And so when they're evaluating, they're asking their people what they want, hosting focus groups. For them, it makes it, a no-brainer. There might be organizations where they're saying, hey, we're really, maybe there's other sort of issues that are going on with your organization, or, hey, maybe we have this population of 1,000 people and they're really lacking LLM skills, and that's the biggest challenge, and that's the thing that's on their mind. Then maybe we start with the LLM lunch and learn. So I think, again, it really comes down to what your organization needs, because at the end of the day, just like a product, you need to drive usage and activation and engagement and ultimately satisfaction. Or if people aren't using your product, that's not fun for anyone. So always start with research, identify what the problems are, and then you can find the best vendors, mix of vendors and organizations, products that will serve the needs of your population. And I know there's a desire to run toward AI or run toward X because leadership is telling you to, but I think one of the things that we've seen is, again, focus on the population, start there. This is not like I know there's a societal angst and existential crisis that we need to figure it out all these things right now, but we're in early innings. And I know it feels sometimes like if you read what other organizations are doing, I think it's very easy to feel like you are behind. I mean, I feel that all the time too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we all feel that way. It's not true.
Right? It's like that's just what's happening right now, but it's like, put the blinders on, focus on your organization. You are the expert within your organization. And just because there's a broad mandate to AI everything figure out what's actually the best for your organization. And I think if you lead with the people, and then you have the similar metrics that you can report out, hey, this many people are using it, this is the engagement rate, this is this. If you deliver a product that people love, your leader, it's going to be very hard, and that's impactful. It's going to be very hard for your leadership to say, we should cut this. So think across all those measures. I think a big thing that's gotten, that's been hard is that it's been hard to find a lot. If you have 50% activation rate and your usage rates are 30% and your satisfaction for the 30% is good, but no one's really using it, that's not a great product. So now is the time to use AI as the sort of, it's like the Trojan horse of innovation. To me, that's really kind of what I think of it as. How are we innovating? How are we expanding what we're offering? How are we doing things differently? How are we preparing our workforce for this? How are we innovating? So think about it like that. Just, whenever you see AI, think of how to innovate. And I think that this is why it's such a golden opportunity, because I don't think a lot of functions within organizations, especially L&D, have ever been given such a big mandate to really build and do from scratch.
Yeah. How do we continue to learn and grow and innovate? That's what everybody's trying to do. You're not necessarily behind. You just need to go experiment and talk to different people.
If you're thinking about it right now and you're thinking about it like this, you're fine. And again, blinders on. It's really easy. I mean, learn, but also, comparing
Focus on what's
ourselves.
best for your organization. Don't get too distracted.
And comparing ourselves is never a healthy, never good for the mindset.
Compare and despair. Jaime, for anybody listening that wants to get in touch with you, learn more about what's going on at Mento, where's the best place for them to go?
Mento.co. That's our website. Check it out. LinkedIn, we're there too, of course. I know you all are there as well, my HR leaders and fans. So yes, connect with us, connect with me, and we'd love to continue the conversation. We love meeting incredible leaders like all of you in the L&D space. So thank you for the opportunity for this discussion, Andy.
Well, Jaime, thank you so much for coming on, for your support of the show. I've been excited to work with you. It's been really cool to see what you're doing and what you're building at Mento. For anybody that wants to go check them out, if you're building a new coaching program, you're exploring that, whether it be for working with human coaches or AI, go check out mento.co to learn more. That's mento.co. Jaime, thank you again for being here. I look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Yes, thank you so much, Andy. Have a great one.